Today we're going to be talking about Sedna, and it is a dwarf planet, and it's in the outermost reaches of the solar system. It's the most distant solar system object ever discovered back in 2003. It is twice as far from the sun as any other system in any other object in our solar system, and 3 times farther than Pluto or Neptune. So we're going to kind of dive into the lore of this first, of what Sedna's mythology is and why they decided to name this dwarf planet after her. It's actually a very sad story, but I do want to read a little bit about it. More than one version of Sedna legend exists. Some legends have her as the daughter of a goddess, while others only mention her father. In one legend is a giant, the daughter of the creator god, Angunta and Gutta, with a great hunger that causes her to attack her parents. Angered, Gutta takes her out to sea and throws her over the side of his kayak. As she clings to the sides, he chops off her fingers and she sinks to the underworld, becoming the ruler of the monsters of the deep. Her huge fingers become the seals, walruses, and whales hunted by the Inuit. Another version is that she is dissatisfied with men found for her by her father and so marries a dog. Her father is so angry at this that he throws her into the sea, and when she tries to climb back into the boat, he cuts off her fingers. So the thing that is always consistent is cutting off of the fingers. The version that I know of is that she was married or betrothed to somebody and she didn't want to. It was either to, she was being sold to marriage, and she was in the kayak and something happened to where her father had to, in order to survive, I guess maybe the boat might have been sinking or something happened to where it could only handle one. So he threw her over to sacrifice her, and so he could get away, and he cut her fingers off. So the story that I recall is that she was betrayed, and yeah. So now that you have a little bit of knowledge of where Sedna's origins are from, let's go ahead and get into the astrological part. I'm on astro.com, and I'm going to read an article written about Sedna consciousness, the soul's path of destiny, by Alan Clay. The author introduces us to his voluminous new book on the possible dwarf planet Sedna, 8 billion miles away, whose orbital period is so long that the whole of recorded human history has taken place in the last Sedna 6 months. Here he contends that Sedna's astrological themes include transcendence and spiritual growth, and he looks ahead deeper into the 21st century to discover what comes next on our Earth journey. When a new solar system body is discovered, clues to the astrological meaning can be found by looking at a range of factors, but primarily meaning comes from studying the planet in a large number of charts to find common themes. Here I'm going to present an overview of my research into the new outermost planet in our solar system, which I conducted for my new book, Sedna Consciousness. Along the way, we'll discover the evolutionary power of the candidate dwarf planet and learn of the profound implications for society as Sedna approaches her closest point to Earth later this century in the 2070s. Orbital characteristics. Sedna has a huge egg-shaped orbit of 11,406 Earth years and is to be found far beyond all the other planets in our solar system, even at its closest point. Many astrologers believe that each new planet represents a new aspect or level of consciousness that humanity starts to embrace from the moment of its discovery. And if this is true, Sedna represents the weird new outer limit of our consciousness, which is going to stretch our concepts of reality and pull us to look at ourselves as part of the very big picture. Another way to deduce the meaning of a newly discovered planet is to look at previous cycles and the correlation with mundane events here on Earth. With Sedna approaching her closest point to Earth later this century, let's look back to the last close pass of the two planets. Neolithic Revolution. The last close pass of Sedna correlates with the end of the last ice age on Earth and the beginning of agriculture, called the Neolithic Revolution. It involved the wide-scale transition of many human cultures from a lifestyle of hunting and gathering to one of agriculture and settlement, making a growth in population possible. During the following Sedna year, it would transform the small mobile groups of hunter-gatherers that had hitherto dominated human prehistory into sedentary non-nomadic societies based in built-up villages and towns. These societies radically modified their natural environment by means of specialized food crop cultivation with irrigation and deforestation, which allowed extensive surplus food production. The development of non-portable art and architecture, centralized administrations and political structures, hierarchical ideologies, and depersonalized systems of knowledge such as writing. So the whole of our known human history came in the last Sedna year since the Neolithic Revolution. In fact, all recorded human history has occurred just in the last 6 Sedna months. It's about 433,000 Sedna years since the Earth was created, and roughly 20 Sedna years since people who are recognizably human first walked the Earth. Hold on one second. Sorry, Boba was making a lot of noise, so I had to go take care of that. So now we're into Sedna in the signs. By mid-Sedna year, when she was in Libra and approaching the full moon phase of her orbital cycle, almost as far from Earth as possible, the first fully developed manifestation of the Neolithic Revolution could be seen in the Middle Eastern Sumerian cities, where it first emerged, also heralding the beginning of the Bronze Age. The movement of Sedna into Scorpio, the sign of sex and death, around 3000 BC, signaled the rise of the ancient Egyptian civilization, with the building of the pyramids and a religion which was in essence a cult of the dead. During the Sagittarius phase in the sign of law and education, the Greek miracle brought forth the early sciences, the arts, and the concept of democracy. Jump forward to modern times, and for 100 years prior to 1965, the transit of Sedna through Aries, the sign of will, force, and war, saw the world wars of the first half of the 20th century and the growing threat and reality of atomic war. With the Sedna ingress into Taurus in 1965, the emphasis turned to money and property, to greed and questions of value, to the slogan, "Make love, not war," to environmentalism and global warming, which have become driving economic factors in modern times. So now it's going to be moving into Gemini. So Sedna in Gemini, 2024. Actually, I don't know if it was today or sometime this month, if not today. So it's going to be from 2024 to 2068. We're currently in what we're calling a digital revolution. It is likely that this will morph more into a consciousness revolution. That's a bold and, dare I say it, hopeful claim. And anything I write about Sedna and Gemini at this stage is pure speculation. Everything is pure speculation. But because the sign is Gemini, we do know that it's going to have to do with the mind, with intellectual debate, opinions, and communication. Oh yeah. One of the discovery events of 2003, which I linked to Sedna because that's when she was discovered, is the development of neural networks, which is the basis of artificial intelligence. Ray Kurzweil is a scientist, inventor, and futurist who made a series of predictions in the 1990s. All his predictions to date have been released, so here are some for this Gemini period. By the 2030s, virtual reality will begin to feel 100% real. We will be able to upload our mind consciousness by the end of the decade. By the 2040s, non-biological intelligence will be 1 billion times more capable than biological intelligence. Nanotech, foglets, microbots known as smart material will be able to make food out of thin air and create any object in the physical world at a whim. By 2045, we will multiply our intelligence 1 billion-fold by linking wirelessly from our neocortex to a synthetic neocortex in the cloud. And this was written an article, January 26, 2015 article on singularityhub.com by Peter Diamandis. We see that Sedna in Gemini is going to be all about the rise of artificial intelligence, which will inevitably promote a consciousness revolution. And a consciousness revolution is a spiritual revolution. Yeah. Okay, so Sedna myth interpretation based off of Alan Clay's article here. Another way we derive meaning for newly discovered planets is to look at the myth behind the name of the planet. Sedna was named after the Inuit goddess of the sea, and interestingly, the Inuits did not believe in divinity. To them, the gods were alive and part of this world, not dead, or not in heaven either. The varying legends each give different rationales for Sedna's transcendence, but in each version, her father, or the people, take her to sea in a boat and throw her overboard. In each, she clings to her old life, and her fingers are chopped off before she lets go. And in each version, she sinks to the bottom of the sea, becoming the sea goddess, worshipped by hunters who depend on her goodwill to supply food. Victimization or transcendence. Many of the traditional astrological interpretations of the Sedna myth focus on the unconscious actions which led her to her transcendence and her father's role in this process, emphasizing the victimization and sacrificial interpretations of the planet. However, interpretations which focus on Sedna's attempts to stay on the boat of reality and calling her a victim forget that she transcended to godhood through this process. Transcendence is not victimization, and the two may only be confused if we desperately hang onto the old reality. Okay, so astrological meaning. One of the case studies in the book Sedna Consciousness is Edgar Casey, the father of modern holistic medicine. We get a hint from him that Sedna combines heredity, evolutionary change, and spiritual development into a unitary worldview. Okay. That is why I call subtitle my book, The Soul's Path of Destiny. Because if we accept the idea of past lives, our soul's path of destiny over those lifetimes would combine aspects of heredity and evolutionary change with the spiritual growth of the soul. And from the myth, we get the idea that it relates to various unconscious experiences which come from our heredity that will push us to a painful crisis of transcendence, where we are forced to let go of our old spiritual framework and rise to a new consciousness. Legendary humanistic astrologer Dane Rudier posited that there were 3 different levels on which each planet could operate depending on the evolution of our consciousness. The vast majority of us are at the beginner's level. Yeah. And we will manifest the energy of Sedna from a position of being buried in the dysfunctional swamp of density. Largely unconscious of the all-encompassing spiritual energy of the planet, we are likely only to notice it when it jolts our reality to correct some imbalance in our lives by bringing us illness or victimization, to steer us back onto the true path of our soul's destiny. At the intermediate level, we tire of density and the grief it creates, and we start a spiritual journey to get out of the swamp. This is the key to working with Sedna. She wants to get us on a spiritual path or recognize the spiritual path that we're on. Then she hits us with transcendent crisis, experiences which force us to let go and rise above them, resulting in a huge growth to a new level of consciousness. There is no choice with these crises, and the more we try and solve them, the more we will get hurt. At this juncture in human evolution, few people use their planets at the spiritual level, but such people are wonderful to be around. The well-known pattern with the other planets is that spiritual level is vastly different from the two previous levels, and this is also true for Sedna. Here, the struggle of the beginner's level is gone, as are transcendental crises of intermediate level. At this level, everything Saturnian is meaningless, and yet everything Sednian has its place. So, here are some keywords for 3 levels of spiritual development. At the unconscious level, it's fairly dark. But this doesn't mean that all darkness comes from Sedna. She just uses every tool she has to get us on the spiritual path. At the unconscious level, things like victimization, persistent illness, alienation, unrelenting trauma and suffering, nurturing resentment, unbearable pressure, caught in quicksand, personal blind spots. On the spiritual path, radical acceptance, acknowledging just how bad things really are and starting from there, keeping our heart open in hell, nurturing our sense of humor, beating our drum and seeing to life, and fated transcendence. At the spiritually evolved level, spiritual destiny, transcendent peace, nurturing abundance, allowing love and harmony, transpersonal consciousness, higher octave of Ceres. The newly reclassified dwarf planet Ceres can be thought of as the higher octave of the moon, meaning that the emotional security of the moon is transmuted to a sustenance and nurturing of our spiritual security and sense of place on planet Earth with Ceres. This is very similar to Sedna, except that Sedna operates on a far vaster scale. As she may find that Sedna is the higher octave of Ceres, as we may find, where the spiritual security and sense of place on Earth with Ceres is transmuted in a transpersonal nurturing of our spirituality and sense of place in the evolutionary cycle with Sedna. Hmm. Wow. Oh, that's interesting. Author Alan Clay, he's a practicing astrologer of 40 years standing with basis in humanistic astrology. He's had a long interest in Chiron and the centaurs, most recently exploring dwarf planets. Spent the last 2 or so years researching 700 charts for his book, Sedna Consciousness. That's cool. Well, I'd like to know your thoughts about this. I do find it very possible that everything, well, not possible, I mean, it's true for me. I feel it true that things align in specific ways, almost like they were meant. And we still have free will, even if things align in specific ways. We just get to choose where it goes in our personal journey. But collectively, I think everyone feels different alignments at certain degrees and where it sparks for them. But, there's that saying that we're just a thought in God's mind. We're just a dream of His. Maybe we are. I wonder what happens when we dream. Peace out.